You want to get nuts? Let's get nuts! Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. You can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad. Smash the like button if you love me. I know you do. I mean, look at me. Subscribe if you're new. Please have your say. A studio executive has said that fans don't care about good movies or good execution. All they care about is nostalgia. He was talking about the Flash movie. What did this mean? It's an underhanded put down. It's an underhanded compliment. In other words, the Flash movie isn't well executed. It isn't a well-made movie, but it's got lots of cameos and lots of nostalgia, and that's enough. We will see what happens on release of this movie. But Andy Muschietti has given the reason why Grant Gustin and several other TV actors don't cameo in the Flash movie. And it's the most pathetic excuse I've ever heard. If you want to know if I'm a Grant Gustin fan, I'm a big Grant Gustin the Flash fan. Huge Grant Gustin fan. I am disgusted that he's no longer in this movie. Muschietti has also confirmed that Marlon Brando's Jor-El got a little cameo in the Speed Force as well, but it was cut. So he reckons that he had to choose between TV cameos and movie cameos, so he had to choose the movie cameos like basically Linda Carter, etc., etc., because basically most of the cameos are during Barry's kind of running within the Speed Force. He's running in the Speed Force, and you see these different kind of, different characters from all the, the multiverses, all the different versions of films in the DC universe from the past. And it's a really cool sequence. I give them that. But what basically his excuse is dumb, because you don't just have to have the cameos while Barry's running through the Speed Force. There's other ways of having cameos. I know a lot of people that are upset that Grant Gustin is not in this movie. Let's cast our minds back to Crisis on Infinite Earths. Ezra Miller had a shocking, amazing, surprising cameo on that show. The chemistry between Grant and Ezra was beautiful. Ezra wasn't paid for the cameo. He was asked quickly, he was happy, he was enthusiastic, no toxicity, no problem. Ezra was a darling on the set. It was a great moment for us, the fans. It was surprising, and people love that type of shit. Now, we felt that this kind of thing, this relationship between the two Barrys, would continue in the Flash movie. After all, it's a logical deduction, right? But not to have Grant, because you're saying you didn't have enough time and you had to choose between the movie cameos and the film cameos, is a pathetic excuse. Grant Gustin, no one's carried a show for 9 years like Grant Gustin has. The Flash series was great for a couple of seasons. Then it became shit, and Grant has been carrying that show. He could have quit at any time. He has a bajillion offers. Really, really talented actor, Grant Gustin. Great Barry Allen, great Flash. I'm not going to tell you who you should prefer, but the lad has been great. Nobody can deny that. He's not the first live action Flash. We know that. John Wesley Shipp was, and he was great as well, and he played a huge role. Think about this. He played a huge role in the Flash CW series. He played Barry's father. He played another version of the Flash. They really respected that iconic older version of the character. And Andrew Muschietti, DC, and WB haven't done so. And their excuse is, we didn't have enough time, we didn't have enough space in the movie. Bullshit, bollocks, it's not right. Because you didn't have to use, he shouldn't have been a cameo. He should have played a huge role in this movie. But we know that Cyborg was originally going to play a huge role in this movie. In fact, like Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, the Flash movie was originally this buddy-buddy thing between Cyborg and the Flash when it was being handled by different writer-directors. This was Zack's original vision when he was running things. And we know that Ray Fisher fell out with the studio. Personally, if I'm running a studio, I don't care if I like the actor or not. I don't care if he's calling me this, that, or the other. I don't care if he's calling me an ist or an ism. He's in that movie, and I continue the beautiful relationship that Cyborg and the Flash had in that movie. I'm continuing that relationship. It makes sense. Then you've got the situation of Iris West, who's one of the most important characters in the Flash graphic novels, right? Canonical, important. They cast a beautiful, talented actress in Kiersey. She's so good. We saw her a little bit in Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. She was cut from Justice League again, disgusting. And then when the same people were in control, they cut her again. Well, they didn't cut her. She's in the movie. She's just not in the movie a lot. You heard her voiceover in trailer 2 of the Flash movie. But going back to Grant Gustin, I think it's despicable. I don't agree with the decision. Just like Cyborg, he should have played a huge role in this movie. What I would have done. Let's talk about this movie and how toxic it is with the people it cuts out. So by now, most of you, even the ones who haven't heard the leaks, know what's going on if you've been following my channel or other platforms for a long time. Act 1 has Batfleck, you know, he's in, basically, he's in the Snyderverse, Earth 1, Batfleck's there, he interacts with Bruce Wayne, he decides to change the past, blah-de-blah-de-blah. You've got Wonder Woman in that timeline as well. But there's a lot of characters from the Justice League and from that universe that you don't see in that movie. But there's a hell of a lot that you do see from the Snyderverse and DCEU's Earth 1 in the movie. We know Henry Cavill is cut from this movie. In fact, he never played a big role. Now, when they did decide to put him in the Black Adam post-credit scene, he also shot something that was going to lead into Man of Steel 2. What a shame. So this is what I do with this movie around the structure that we already have for it. Henry Cavill's Superman is there. With Barry, with Batfleck, with Gal's Wonder Woman, Cyborg's there. You know, we do different things there, but we see the whole of the Justice League that we met in the first movie. It's there. That universe that Zack built is there. Because that is the world you are representing. Everyone's there, Superman's there. Right, so when he goes back to the past to change things and he's broken the universe, as he says in the trailer, you can still have Supergirl replacing him in the new timeline, right? Zod could kill him as a baby as it is in the movie. Because that's not so bad because you've already used Cavill's Superman in the first act. So if you want to delete him from the franchise, you still can when Barry resets the universe. He goes into the new timeline, but you've already used him. You've given him a fond farewell like you did in the movie. Like you've given him a fond farewell like you gave Batfleck in the movie. So that works. Everyone is respected. The fans are happy, and it's there. I believe that Grant Gustin's Barry Allen should play a huge role in the third act of this movie. There's lots of different things you could have done. You've got Ezra Miller playing 2 versions of The Flash in this movie. The past version, the 2013 version, they're on screen together. You've seen it in the trailers. You know what? I suppose you could still do that. I mean, there's lots of different things you could have done. You could have had Grant Gustin, you know, somehow turn up in the new universe and somehow he's unaltered and he's there trying to help Barry. You could have had Grant Gustin's Barry Allen and Ezra Miller's Barry Allen running together to reset the timeline in the Speed Force, you know, been a really buddy thing to do. And as I say, Cyborg absolutely shouldn't have been omitted from that movie. It doesn't matter about the issues. It's like I always say about Amber Heard. She didn't do anything apart from be a shitty person. We can't cut shitty people from movies just because they may be shitty people. Now, in terms of Ezra, Ezra's broken the law, so if Ezra did get fired, that would have been understandable. When you break the law, there are consequences. Well, there are for you and for me. Maybe not for people within the industry with Hollywood DNA. But it's fine. They didn't get rid of them. They didn't sack them. They made the decision. They're the Flash in this universe. Fair enough. But there were so many ways to use Grant and to use other versions of the Arrowverse. This is a multiversal movie, right? Now, it's all very well going into the Speed Force and seeing actors who have played the iconic versions of these characters like Christopher Reeve, Linda Carter, you know, Val Kilmer, George Clooney. I mean, spoiler alert, go away if you don't want to know. But there's some pretty cool nostalgic moments while Barry's in the Speed Force. You do see Nicolas Cage as Superman fighting a freaking spider like he was going to do in the Tim Burton Superman Lives movie. Give me that movie now, because that is fucking awesome. Fucking awesome, right? So there's some really cool nostalgic moments there. But of course, it isn't just about nostalgia. I'll go back to Spider-Man No Way Home. People actually think that movie made over $2 billion just on nostalgia and not execution. That movie was beautifully executed in its narrative. Doesn't overuse the nostalgia in Maguire and Andy Garfield. They're in there a little bit in the third act, but the big deal, the point of the movie is Tom Holland's Spider-Man and his journey into becoming the Spider-Man we know and love from the comics. In the end, they're gone. He's in an apartment. His girlfriend's forgotten him. His best friend's forgotten him. He's on his own. They really focus on the main Spider-Man. So I think that some people think, oh, it's all about nostalgia and not execution. If you don't execute a movie properly, it's not going to work. The fans will say, oh, well, there's some good nostalgia there, but there's other problems with the movie. Just wait for the reviews of the Flash movie. People are not stupid. You cannot, you can't have nostalgia over execution. That's not how it works. But if you're setting the premise on nostalgia over execution, you need to have a good story. If you're going to overbloat the movie with nostalgic moments, I don't think this movie is overbloated with nostalgia, because most of the nostalgia is very quickly, blink if you miss it, in the Speed Force. While Barry's in the Speed Force, we see lots of different cameos very quickly, like the cool Nicolas Cage one. And I think it's really cool as you're seeing him run into the Speed Force. You're trying to work out who you've seen, who you haven't seen. As I say, blink if you miss it. It's a clever way to do it, but I don't think it's over kind of peppered with cameos and Easter eggs. It's fun. Michael Keaton's in the movie a lot. Michael Keaton's great in the movie. I still don't like the way he says, you want to get nuts, let's get nuts, so calmly. It might be because he's in his 80s and he doesn't have the lungs to do it like he once did. So maybe I should just give him a pass and the film a pass about that. But Grant Gustin being omitted from this movie is plain wrong, because they fucking teased their relationship, their future relationship in Crisis on Infinite Earths. And all the fans were looking forward to that chemistry being continued in the Flash movie. It's an opportunity missed. So you talk about nostalgia over execution and the nostalgic potential of Grant Gustin. For most people, the version of the Flash, most people, this generation have been watching him for nearly a decade, and he's not there. And for me, that's tragic, that's sad. It isn't just something you can wave away and excuse. oh well. If this was a bona fide Flash origin movie, right, that was just about the Flash, and, you know, they pepper some Easter eggs from the DCEU, but it's not overly nostalgic, then you say, well, Grant Gustin doesn't have to be in the movie. It's not a multiversal movie. There's no point in doing it. But considering they're feeding this movie on nostalgia, on your excitement, let's be honest, the reason most of you are excited for this movie is because Michael Keaton's Batman and other figures are in this movie. So if you're going to do that, then Grant Gustin must be involved. If you're delving into the multiverse, Grant Gustin must be involved. And it's really disrespectful. I'm not sure if Grant's bothered or not. He seems like tired of the Flash and DC and WB. I think he's relieved and he's happy to be moving on. I think his shoulders must really ache from carrying this show for nearly a decade. But I do think it's disrespectful, not just to Grant, but the fans who love Grant. Because what happens is now, people know he's not in the movie, right? So you've lost a section of the audience. It's not smart that you couldn't even keep it a secret that he's not in that movie. So already you're losing elements of the box office. You are disappointing people. People will say, well, how many people come in to watch that show anyway? It doesn't matter if it's a couple of 100,000, if it's 800,000, if it's a 1.1 million or 1.2 million, that's still a hell of a lot of people to bump up your box office. And you don't get arrogant and say, well, that's not a lot of people, it doesn't matter. Look, it's an easy thing to do. You set it up. Now, I've been one of the harshest critics of Greg Berlanti's Arrowverse and what he's done to it, because I didn't like the first few years, but credit to him. Credit to Greg. He brought in Ezra Miller. It was a great idea. That whole team made that situation happen. It was a shocking, surprising cameo. And for a change, DC fans could say, oh, look, we got something over Marvel. This is a really exciting thing to do. A movie version in a television show. That's really exciting. And people saying, you know, this would be really cool if they reversed that in the Flash movie. Or maybe even lead with that at the beginning of the movie, that kind of interaction. That would have been fun. But not to even use Grant Gustin in this film is an own goal. I don't blame Andres Muschietti, because Andres Muschietti is a studio director. He's not an auteur. He was just doing as he was told. And he's pushed it out in front of everyone, and he's got to make the, you know, some justifiable excuses why Grant and others are not involved. I mean, I think it's crazy if you think about it, because they didn't omit everything from the Arrowverse in this movie. I mean, think about this for a minute, right? Again, leave the room if you don't want to know about this spoiler. But Teddy Sears, who played Zoom in season 2 of The Flash, is in this movie. Now, he wasn't in the early test screenings. I never saw him anyway, but he is now in this movie. So wait a minute. Teddy Sears, cameos in the Flash movie, who played Zoom. I love Teddy. I loved him in 24 Legacy. I love him in everything that he does. He was a brilliant villain for the Flash season 2. But how can that guy be in it? Be playing a character from the Flash Arrowverse series, but the star of that show, the actor who kept it going for all those years, isn't in this movie at all. That makes no sense whatsoever. And guess what? It's not too late to mock up a cameo or something with Grant. But Grant should have played a huge role in this movie, as Ray Fisher should have done as Cyborg. Again, I don't care about the personal problems that, you know, the studio had with Ray. That's neither here nor there. Ray didn't break any laws. He didn't sleep with anyone's wives. He didn't hit anyone. He was just speaking truths. And, you know, Marlon Brando literally sent a Native American woman to decline his Oscar, and nothing happened to him all those years ago. Jesus Christ, right? Stop it. Just stop it. Let's stop firing people because they speak some truths. Let's stop, you know, wanting to boycott movies because Amber Heard was a bad partner to Johnny Depp, as he was any better to her anyway. But the point being these are bad decisions. No Grant Gustin in the Flash movie is disgusting, it's despicable, and I don't like it, and it's as simple as that. Now, we're going to get a little bit more positive because it has been a huge week to be a DC fan. I don't know if it's been negative and positive. The fandom's so divided, it's really difficult to know somehow. In terms of people getting early access, I've spoken about this before. I think it's been a very educational week in terms of people who do get early access to content, TV shows and movies. I think it needs to end. I think the industry needs to look at this and just pick a few trusted critics to get early access a month before the movie's released so they can give a proper, constructive review of the movie for us, the consumer. That's why critics were invented, for us, to inform us about a movie, not necessarily give us their opinions. We got this Jeff Snyder geezer mocking the June movie directed by Denis Villeneuve, saying he fell asleep through most of the movie. He repeatedly says it on Twitter. That's not what we need to hear from you, Mr. Big King Access Media. You got your access to inform us intelligently and constructively. But unfortunately, these people have egos. That's why they mute us. That's why they block us. Because it's all very well that we have to make them rich and we have to give them access, right? But when it's the other way around and we give them our constructive opinions, their little egos can't handle it. I think this early access situation needs to change because the reactions to The Flash, what I heard last night about Guardians of the Galaxy, the way they keep on acting, these influencers and these journalists, it's basically the biggest grift I've ever seen. And this week, I've had enough of it. And I want it to end. But we do have an exciting climax to an exciting week for DC. And it's Zack Snyder's full circle. It's SnyderCon 2, which is very, very exciting. Zack Snyder will have free Q&As for his free DC movies. Man of Steel, Batman vs Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut on Sunday. So today it's Man of Steel, tomorrow it's BVS, and Sunday it's Zack Snyder's Justice League Snyder Cut. What does full circle actually mean? Now, to me, it means I've come full circle. I've done the thing. It's over. It's time for a new chapter. Now, a lot of Snyder fans won't want to hear this. I personally feel that Zack would love to finish his Justice League arc. That if he had the opportunity, he would take it maybe in a couple of years' time when he's not so busy. And that's fine. I love the Snyderverse. I've been watching Man of Steel for 2 days flat in a row because I love it. It looks like a movie that was only made yesterday. The cinematography, the VFX, the narrative of the movie. I think it's a great contemporary modern day Superman movie. Is it flawed? Yes. Does it have issues? Yes. But it's a movie I love. There's no such thing as a perfect movie anyway. But I think, as Michael J. Fox says in Back to the Future, maybe you guys ain't ready for this now, but your kids are going to love it. And I think that's what the Snyderverse is. So I love Man of Steel, I love BVS, and I especially love the Snyder Cut. But Man of Steel is a special movie. As I say, it's not a perfect movie. It's not without its issues, but I really, really like it. And I think it was a very brave and bold kind of version of Superman to reignite the Superman myth for a modern audience. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. It worked out for a cult audience like the rest of the Snyderverse did. But I always go back to these movies and say they were great free movies. They were meant to be 5 movies. They wasn't supposed to be a trilogy. There was so much drama behind the scenes. It's even more entertaining behind the scenes than it was watching the movies. And these movies are really, really entertaining. But they're not for everyone. They're clearly not made for a mainstream audience. And at the end of the day, Warner Brothers wanted them to be for a mainstream audience. And why bring an auteur, a divisive auteur like Snyder, to make these movies in the first place? None of this makes sense. I love Man of Steel. I love the bit when the soldiers put their guns down And basically, Colonel Hardy says this man isn't our enemy. That whole bit when he walks out, Zimmer's music, always gives me the feels. There's so many great moments in this movie. People say he doesn't smile in the movie. He smiles when he flies. Both times when the first flight sequence. Smiles a fucking lot. Maybe you should actually watch the movie rather than deciding to shit on the movie. There's a lot of great things about Man of Steel. I love it. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. The Snyderverse for me is brilliant. But it has its issues. It wasn't for everyone. You don't have to like it. You don't have to hate it. Whatever you feel about the Snyderverse, that's okay. I'm just telling you how I feel about the Snyderverse. I'm devastated that most probably we're not going to get any more. But that's okay, because I've got 3 beautiful Snyderverse movies to enjoy. I can always dust them down from my physical media collection. And I can also have an open mind about James Gunn's future. Just because I love the Snyderverse, I don't have to screenshot, you know, over 10-year-old tweets from James Gunn. Because nobody's perfect. This is Hollywood. You can root in any Hollywood director's history and find shitty takes and shitty behaviour. But James Gunn has made at least 2 great Guardians movies. People have reacted to his 3rd movie. I haven't seen the 3rd movie personally. He's good at what he does. And I believe he really wants to do something great with DC and Superman. I have my concerns over him being in charge, as we discuss every day. But as I said yesterday, I'm now going to start going into this with an open mind, with some excitement. Now, in terms of the rest of this year's films, I'm going to make a confession. I'm probably more excited for Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom than I am seeing the Flash movie. Probably because I saw an early test screening of the Flash movie. I'm kind of worn out by talking about the movie. My friends have told me about the movie they saw at CinemaCon. Very different. The leaks, as I predicted, so many leaks. We've spoken about some of them already. Lots of exciting cameos, of course, but a very different movie to the one I saw in the early test screenings. I am excited to go to the cinema and watch the Flash movie. And I think, like you people who went to see it at CinemaCon, I think you're even going to get a more polished version when it's released. I really hope they fix the VFX problems. The 2 Flashes, Supergirl needs a lot of VFX polishing up. We all know that. Personally, if something's not ready, you don't show it in a trailer. Now, the early screening at CinemaCon's different. They were told this is not a finished, polished movie. That's okay. And I'm sure they'll be working on this movie till the day of release. But when you're marketing, you've got to put your best foot forward. Now, unlike others, I think Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom is a very exciting movie. And I think, you know, I think some people will enjoy it. Maybe some won't. Maybe some will find it dull. Now, Amber Heard is in 20 minutes of this movie as well. She looks great. We spoke about some reveals about that movie. There is a brand new child for Aquaman and Mera. So, you know, Arthur Curry is now a father and a husband, and he gets to know his brother. The great thing about this movie is the relationship between Orm and Arthur. I love Patrick Wilson when he was being the villainous Orm, but this movie also takes a deep dive into Black Manta, a much bigger dive than the first film does. It's a brilliant dive. I think a lot of people are going to enjoy this movie. Can this movie make the $1 billion plus it shockingly did in the first movie? I have no idea. If you listen to all the voices that are talking about this movie at the moment, it's not looking good. All I know is that James Wan has made another stunning movie. Cinematography and the VFX, it breaks ground in film again. You know, I've never disliked anything that James Wan does, and that's where I am. But I am very much looking forward to Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom. My attitude to this year's movies is I want to go and enjoy what's left, but I also want to move on and see what James is going to give us. and take the movies from the DCEU and rewatch them whenever I want, the ones that I like, right? But move on, right? If Zach one day, you know, in the studio say, hey, you know, you can start finishing your movies one day, I'll be happy. But I'm also happy to have an open mind for the future and take it a film at a time. I think ultimately that's the only thing we can do. This has been Friday's edition of the DC Universe Daily with me, Mick, your host with the most. Smash the like button if you like me. Please have your say and subscribe if you're new. Smash the notification bell so you never miss this beautiful perfection. I mean, look at me, ladies. And I will see you in the next video. Until I see you again, goodbye, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen.